Would you still call it home? If the first thing you saw when you came back was your suitcase sitting on the curb, I used to call it home. Then one afternoon, after returning from a quiet week, visiting my younger brother in Oregon, where we spent our days chatting by the wood stove, sipping herbal tea, and listening to birds tap on the old window pane, I stood frozen in front of my own house. In front of me were 4 neatly arranged suitcases on the edge of the sidewalk. A note was taped carefully to the handle of the largest suitcase. If you still want to stay, the garage is empty. Love, your dear daughter-in-law. There I stood, 68 years old, staring at the house my husband Walter and I built with our own hands back when our son Nathan was just a baby in a crib. The house where I planted every sprig of lavender, shoveled piles of snow each winter, and imagined myself growing old until my final breath. And now I no longer had a key. No door left to open, just my luggage lined up as if silently saying goodbye. It had started to rain, but it was not nearly as cold as the chill in my chest. Maybe you're wondering, how did I let it get this far? I used to ask myself the same thing. But then I realized, sometimes erasure does not arrive with screaming or outright cruelty. It comes in avoided glances, in your favorite reading chair being moved temporarily to the basement, in being quietly pushed into smaller and smaller corners, both physically and emotionally, until you start to believe you no longer belong. My name is Helen Abrams, and if you've ever been a mother, a grandmother, or a wife, someone who gave her whole life only to be treated like an old piece of furniture, this story is for you. But before I continue, let me know where you're watching this from. Leave a comment with your city. I want to know how far this story will travel. And if something I say touches your heart, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because what comes next, you will not want to miss. That day when I saw my suitcases sitting on the curb, I thought it was the end. I was wrong. It was only the beginning. My hands were shaking as I opened my phone. The taxi that had dropped me off was already gone, but I was too stunned to call it back. I dialed the bank, praying that what I suspected wasn't true. We confirm that Miss Helen Abrams is still the active payer on the mortgage account. The last payment, $1,867, was made on Friday. The bank representative said gently. I nodded, even though she could not see me. Thank you, I whispered, and hung up. I looked up. The sky was heavy and grey, as if it too understood the weight I was carrying. Raindrops began to fall, each one heavy, like the years I had poured into keeping this home alive. And now I stood here, a 68-year-old woman, soaked on the sidewalk, watching my life reduced to 4 suitcases. I should have seen it coming. The way Nathan and Evelyn exchanged glances whenever I mentioned wanting to repaint the kitchen. The rearranged furniture after I left for Christmas, including my favorite chair temporarily placed in the basement. The comments disguised as suggestions. You know, the new senior living centers are actually really nice. They even have reading rooms and flower gardens. Little things. But together, they became a quiet, calculated push out the door. I walked into the garage. It was unlocked. Inside was a single twin mattress in the corner, a small table, and an old bedside lamp. My clothes hung on a rolling rack. The rest of the space was filled with cardboard boxes labeled Mum's Stuff, in handwriting I recognized as Evelyn's. I sat on the edge of the mattress, feet touching the cold cement floor. Through the tiny window, I could see the house, the place I once called my sanctuary, the place where I raised a child, buried a husband, and believed I would die in peace. Now it was just a vivid memory, no longer mine. My phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. Mom, we need more space. Evelyn's waited long enough for her own office. The garage apartment has everything you need. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. Don't make this harder. As if I were the problem. I clutched the phone. Tears didn't come with sobs, but they did come hot and bitter down my cheeks. I thought of all the nights I sat up when Nathan had asthma as a child, the years I worked 2 jobs to pay his college tuition while Walter was struggling, the weekends I babysat so he and Evelyn could have their marriage time. And now, I was a burden, an old object to be moved out of the way. I did not text him back. Instead, I called Rose my best friend for over 30 years. "What's wrong, Helen?" Her voice was thick with worry, sensing everything from just a simple hello. I swallowed hard. I need a place to stay. They moved me into the garage. Rose didn't ask any more questions. "I'm on my way. 20 minutes. I sat there on that twin mattress, surrounded by boxes labeled Mum's stuff, and made a decision. I had poured my love, my strength, and my life into that house. But if they thought they could shove me out with a sticky note, they had picked the wrong woman to mess with. Soon, a car horn sounded outside. I opened the garage door and stepped into the soft drizzle. Rose's headlights lit up the soggy boxes, proof of the betrayal I could barely process. "Oh, Helen," she whispered as she stepped out and wrapped her arms around me. No questions, no judgment, just warmth. We packed the car in silence, just the sound of rain tapping on the roof and the wheels slowly rolling away from the place that used to be mine. Rose's guest room was small plain, but had a window that looked out onto the backyard where the real sunlight came in. I did not need more than that, just a place where no one could put me on the sidewalk like I was in the way. The next morning I woke up empty, but strangely calm. Rose brought me a hot cup of coffee and a piece of advice I never thought I would hear. "It's time you take back what's yours." I hesitated. "But the house? The title is no longer in my name. They have the legal right." "Legal right," Rose interrupted. "You are still the one paying the mortgage. You are not invisible, Helen." In that moment, something clicked. I had let myself fade for too long. After Walter passed, I just wanted things to run smoothly for Nathan and Evelyn. I gave up a little here, a little there. First the kitchen, then the living room, then the right to make decisions in my own home. And now they were putting the house on the market, selling off 35 years of my memories without even asking me. I could not let that happen. Rose called her nephew Andrew, a lawyer who specializes in elder rights. He agreed to meet with me that afternoon. When Andrew sat down across from me and began flipping through my bank statements, his eyebrows furrowed. "Ms. Abrams, I'll be honest. I've seen adult children take advantage of their parents before. But this crosses a line. You have been paying the mortgage on a home you no longer legally own while they live in it for free and plan to profit from its sale." I nodded, torn between shame and rising anger. "The good news," Andrew continued, "is that your consistent payments over the past 2 years, even though you are not on the deed, may give you what's called equitable interest. That means they cannot legally sell the house without addressing your financial stake in it." My eyes widened. So, I could take back the house. Exactly, or at the very least stop them from kicking you out and cashing in. For the first time in years, I felt like I had some control over my own life again. For the first time, someone saw me not as a nagging mother or invisible elder, but as someone with rights. Andrew added, "But first, I think you should confront them just once to give them a chance to make it right. If they refuse, then we proceed legally." I nodded. I knew I had to do it. Not because I believed they would change, but because I needed to hear it from their own mouths that I was no longer part of their family. I needed that clarity no matter how painful to move forward. The next morning, I stood in front of the wrought iron gate that Walter had painted the summer I turned 50. Now I felt like a stranger, knocking on someone else's door. I rang the bell. Evelyn opened the door. She paused for a second, then smiled a thin smile, like a coat of paint over cold metal. "Oh, hi. We weren't expecting you. I need to speak with both of you," I said calmly. "It's about the house." She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." I walked into what used to be my home, but everything felt foreign now, like a showroom copy. The old sofa had been replaced with something sleek and impersonal. Walter's photos were gone. And most painful of all, there was no trace of me anywhere. Nathan walked in from the kitchen, startled to see me. "Mum, what are you doing here?" I got straight to the point. "I heard you're planning to sell the house. Is that true?" 2 seconds of silence. That was all I needed to know the answer. We were going to tell you soon. Nathan looked away. After the paperwork was already done, I said, locking eyes with him, I have lived here for 35 years. Your father and I laid every brick. I planted every flower. And now you want to sell it off like a cheap used sofa, Evelyn cut in. We know you have memories here, but we need a fresh start. Oakwood Hills has better schools for Emma. And honestly, you do not even live here anymore. You want to sell the house while I've been the one paying the mortgage for the past 2 years, I said. Nearly $1,900 a month. Regularly. Not you. Me. Nathan frowned. That was your choice. You volunteered. No. That was trust. I trusted you'd be grateful. I did not expect to be used. Evelyn folded her arms. Come on, you're being dramatic. We didn't kick you out, we just moved you somewhere. More appropriate. More appropriate, I pressed my lips together. The garage. A cement floor room with no window, no heat, and boxes labeled Mom's Stuff in scribbled handwriting. Nathan lowered his voice. Mom, you can still stay there if you want, but we have to live our lives. And I'm the clutter you had to shove aside. My hands tightened. Then hear me clearly. I've stopped paying the mortgage, and I've hired a lawyer. They both froze. My lawyer says I have a financial claim to this house. If you want to sell it, you'll have to reimburse every payment I've made, or I will buy the house myself. Evelyn scoffed. You think the court will side with you? You signed the deed. Legally, the house is ours. You have the papers. But I have 26 months of bank statements. I have the bank's confirmation. And most importantly, I looked directly at Nathan. I'm not afraid of you anymore. Silence filled the room. Then Nathan muttered, So, what do you want? I took a deep breath. I want my house back. Not a corner of the garage. Not a babysitter's schedule. I want to live like a human being in the home I built with my husband. Evelyn exhaled sharply. We already put a deposit down on a new place. If we don't sell this house, we lose everything. That's not my problem, I said. This time you'll figure it out on your own. Nathan started to speak again, but I had already turned toward the door, my hand on the knob. I said one last thing. Your father would be ashamed, and now, so am I. I walked out of that house feeling taller than I had in years. I returned to Rose's house with a whirlwind of emotions. Each step I took felt strangely light because for the first time I had stood up for myself. But deep inside, there was still a quiet ache, not from losing the house, but from losing something I never should have lost trust in the son I raised. Rose was making tea when I walked in. Did you say it? She asked. I nodded, and I told them I've stopped paying the mortgage. It's time they handle it themselves. She set the teacup down and looked me dead in the eyes. I'm proud of you, Helen. But now we do this the right way. Not just for the house, but for your whole existence. That afternoon, I met Andrew at his office. Laid out on the table was the folder he had carefully prepared, bank statements, receipts, text messages, between me and Nathan, and the current mortgage contract. Andrew looked me in the eye and said, even though your name is no longer on the deed, the fact that you've made regular payments without having the right to live in the home and have been treated like an unwelcome guest gives you strong grounds to claim equitable interest. You can demand the return of every dollar you've paid. You could even request to purchase the house for the exact remaining mortgage balance. I looked at him. So, if I want to buy it back, I'll help you draft an official offer. But be ready, they won't make it easy. They may get a lawyer threaten a countersuit or try emotional manipulation. But I promise you legally, you have the upper hand. I nodded. I've waited my whole life to be seen. I'm not backing down now. 3 days later, we sent a formal letter to Nathan and Evelyn, outlining 2 clear options. First, reimburse me for all the mortgage payments I made over the past 2 years, nearly $50,000 if they still wanted to sell the house. Second, transfer ownership back to me at the current mortgage balance. I would pay the full remaining amount. I did not expect them to choose the second option, but for the first time I was no longer afraid of the first. A few hours after they received the letter, Nathan called. I did not answer. He left a voicemail. "Mom, are you really going to tear this family apart over a house? You know Vanessa's pregnant. You're seriously going to put us out on the street?" I listened. Then I deleted it. There was no apology, no remorse, just blame and guilt. That evening, I received a call from the bank. "Ms. Abrams, this is Trevor Phillips, Senior Credit Manager. I wanted to discuss the mortgage account tied to the property on Maple Street." I took a breath. I stopped paying because I was pushed out of the house, despite being the one making the payments. "We've reviewed your case," he said, "and if I may speak frankly, you have every right to file a legal notice asserting your interest in the property. In fact, if you choose to, you can petition the court to freeze any real estate transaction on that home until the dispute is resolved." It felt like a door opening, and I decided to walk through it. 1 week later, Andrew's law firm officially filed a petition with the local court. We requested an injunction to prevent the sale of the Maple Street property and submitted detailed documentation showing my legal interest in the home. At the same time, we asked the court to formally recognize my financial contribution as the basis for an equitable interest, giving me the right to purchase the home at the exact amount of the remaining debt. A few days later, Nathan called again. This time I picked up. His voice was tired and shaky. "Mom, are you seriously suing me?" I answered clearly. "I'm not suing you. I'm protecting the part of my life that I helped build. You know we need the sale to buy the new house. You're ruining everything." I stayed calm. "No, I'm simply refusing to let you sell my memories, my grief, and my work like a discounted item. If you need money, find it yourselves. I'm not your bank anymore." He hung up. I did not cry. For the first time in years, I did not feel torn apart after speaking to my son. 3 weeks later, we went to court. Nathan and Evelyn were there with a young attorney who clearly had not dealt with many cases like ours. Andrew presented our evidence, my bank records messages, the bank's confirmation that I had made every mortgage payment for 26 consecutive months, and a detailed report of my contributions to the house. Their lawyer kept repeating one point: "The house is legally in my client's name. Ms. Abrams contributed voluntarily." There was no written agreement. The judge, a woman in her 60s, looked directly at them. "Let me ask plainly," she said. "Have you been living in that house for free for the past 2 years?" Evelyn's face flushed. Nathan nodded reluctantly. "And during that time, your mother, the person who transferred the house to you in trust, has been paying the mortgage?" No response. The judge nodded slightly, like someone who had seen enough. "We are not just talking about legality. We are talking about basic decency, about the fundamental moral duty we owe one another." She concluded, "I am granting a temporary injunction in favor of Ms. Helen Abrams. No sale or transfer of the property may occur. If the parties cannot reach an agreement, this case will proceed to full litigation." I said nothing, but as I left the courtroom, I saw the panic in Evelyn's eyes, and for the first time I felt no fear in the face of their anger. That afternoon, Nathan showed up at the coffee shop where I had started working Rosie's, the little place that had become a quiet haven while my life was caught in the middle of a storm. He sat down across from me without ordering anything. His eyes lingered on the cup of tea I had placed in front of myself. "I never thought it would come to this," he said, his voice softer than I had heard in years. I did not reply. I calmly wiped the counter, adjusted my apron. "Is there any way we can step back from this?" he asked. I paused. "What do you mean, sell the house back to you? For the mortgage balance, so you can keep it, and we'll walk away?" I looked at him. For a moment, I did not see the cold man who had shoved my suitcases to the curb. I saw a lost boy finally realizing how far he had drifted from himself. "Good," I said quietly. "Meet me and my lawyer tomorrow. Everything needs to be in writing." He nodded, then stood. But just before he walked away, he said, "I do not expect forgiveness, but thank you for not staying silent." I gave a small nod. The next day, I arrived at Andrew's office an hour early. I brought with me a neatly organized file of financial papers tucked carefully into a folder, a habit Walter had instilled in me years ago. Never walk into anyone's life empty-handed, even if it's your own child's. Nathan and Evelyn arrived right on time. There was no arrogance, no smug smiles, just tight faces and eyes that seemed to say what their mouths could not. We lost something we can never get back. Andrew slid the papers across the table, the property transfer contract. If both parties sign here, he explained, the house will be sold back to Ms. Helen Abrams for the amount equal to the remaining loan balance. She will be responsible for paying the full amount to the bank. In return, full ownership of the home will revert to her. No one spoke. Only the sound of pens scratching across paper. When the signatures were done, I carefully tucked the document into my folder. Not because I was afraid to lose it, but because I wanted to remember this moment. The moment I reclaimed what I thought I had lost forever, myself. Evelyn left without saying a word. Nathan lingered. "Are you going to be okay?" he asked, not quite looking at me. I replied, "I've been okay since the day I walked out of that garage." After they left, I stayed in the conference room for a while. The afternoon light came through the window and reflected on the glass. I saw my own face in the pane, silver hair, firm jaw, and a gaze that no longer looked down. I was no longer the woman stirring soup quietly in the kitchen, afraid to raise her voice. I was Helen Abrams, who loved deeply, sacrificed quietly, and finally found the courage to say, enough. 3 months later, I moved back into the Maple Street house. I opened every door, touched every wall. I stood by the kitchen window where Walter used to plant chrysanthemums each spring. Evelyn had painted the whole house in cold grays and beige. I could not undo it all, but I could add warmth, soft linen curtains in pale blue, the old wooden clock I brought back from Rose's, and a framed photo of Walter placed neatly on my nightstand. I walked to the corner of the kitchen, where they had once thrown my reading chair down into the basement. I brought it back upstairs, covered it with a new blanket, and set it by the bookshelf. Then I made myself a cup of tea. And for the first time in many, many years, I sat in my own home and did not feel alone. That evening, Rose came over. "Happy housewarming, take 2, she said, smiling with a pot of soup and a bottle of wine in hand. "It's not a housewarming," I told her. "It's a homecoming." We sat in the backyard, the same place where we threw Nathan's 10th birthday party, where Walter and I once slow danced on our 30th wedding anniversary. And now I sat there with the friend who had stood by me through it all, and we raised our glasses to a new chapter. My life didn't return to how it was, and truthfully, I did not want it to. Each morning I still worked part-time at Rosie's. I liked earning my own money, choosing what I wanted to do with it. I bought back the flower pots Evelyn had tossed out and replanted them along the porch. Sometimes Emma, my granddaughter, was dropped off to visit. She would curl up in the living room reading in the very chair that had once been banished to the basement. I didn't ask her any questions. I just made her a mug of hot cocoa and listened to her stories from school. Nathan did not speak much when he came to pick her up, but the edge in his eyes had softened. The walls were still there, but they no longer screamed of resentment. I didn't expect an apology. The way he avoided my gaze said more than enough. I knew our relationship would probably never be what it once was, but I no longer needed it to be what it once was. What I needed was honesty. I needed space to be myself. I needed a place where when someone asked me, "Where do you live?" I could smile and say I live in my own home. That autumn afternoon, I stood on the front porch. The soft light glowed through the red and amber leaves, the breeze dancing gently over the lavender I had replanted. The house seemed to exhale, as if it knew it had finally returned to the hands of someone who loved it. I closed my eyes. In my mind, I heard Walter's voice, steady kind, like it always had been. "Helen, this is not just bricks and beams. This is where we belong." Yes, I had come back to where I belonged. Not because someone let me stay, not because I was pitied, but because I walked, stood and fought for something that never should have been taken. My voice, my worth, and my home. I am no longer the quiet woman at the back of the kitchen. I am Helen Abrams, the woman who gave, who endured, and who finally dared to say no more. If you're still watching this, maybe you see yourself in part of my story. Maybe you're a mother, a grandmother, a wife, someone who has put everyone else first for far too long. Maybe you feel invisible, left out of the very home you once built. I want you to remember this. You are not invisible. You deserve love. You deserve respect. You deserve a life that is not defined by someone else's expectations or their selfishness. And if one day they put you out into the rain, remember this. You can still walk away, hold your head high, and build your life again, one brick at a time, because we are never too old to begin again. We just need the courage to take the first step. If my story resonated with you, leave a comment. Tell me what city you are watching from and what moment in your life made you strongest. And don't forget to subscribe, because together we are not just telling stories, we are writing chapters of rebirth, freedom, and worth. Because I believe we are not suitcases left on the curb. We are the homes we build with our own hearts.